Good afternoon, everyone. There is a slight moment where you think, are they alive? No, we're just waiting for people to load up. So, let me start off by welcoming you to our webinar. It's a great pleasure to have in the studio today Martin and Lindsay, and we'll introduce them in a second. And also, one of my favourite topics, which is the phenomenal growth of brands selling direct to consumer. So I think if there's a story for our age, it definitely is this one. So we'll cover off the the research today, in our presentation, and have some conversation. But of course, conversation is nothing without you asking us questions. So, not that you need any information on Zoom now, but either along the top, the bottom, or wherever you have your bar, you will see the Q&A button. I'll be keeping an eye on that as we go through the session today, and ask any question you like, and we'll try and cover that off. If you're shy, you can mail us any questions you have to research@retailx.net. But of course, we're not looking at our email now because we're focused. We're with you in the moment. Now, speaking of in the moment, there will come a moment when the webinar is over. And I'm very sorry to say that there's no polite exit with Zoom. So when we get to the end and I click end, it just throws us all out. So I apologise in advance for the rude eviction. But let us now crack on. So remembering Q&A, we're watching, conversation, we're open to it. Let us rather rapidly introduce our lovely panel. So I'm Ian, I'm the CEO of RetailX, but more importantly, we have Lindsay and Martin joining us. So Lindsay, in case anyone's missed our last 6 webinars with you, just tell us who you are and a bit about Telium as well, please.
Well, those photos were definitely taken pre-lockdown. Look how youthful and energetic we all look. Hi, everybody. My name is Lindsay McEwen. I'm the MD for Telium. We're a technology business that's really aimed at helping retailers get a grip on how people interact with their brands and really how to communicate with them in the right place and the right time.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that. Martin, tell everyone who you are.
I'm Martin Shaw, Head of Research at RetailX. My team and I work on reports such as these, where we rank retailers and, in this case, brands, according to how well they serve their customers.
Great. Thank you, Martin, and also for this lovely report. Now, before we dive in, top of the agenda, what themes or topics have really stuck out for you? So when we're thinking about brands direct, I've already, shown my colours by saying I think it's the most exciting area in retail, maybe alongside marketplaces, but personally I find it more exciting. Lindsay, what stands out for you about this world of brands selling direct to consumers?
How interesting that the last year has just really given us this micro focus on exactly this challenge. How do we fulfill direct to us consumers in an environment that's not in the high street? But more importantly, how do we bring back that experience? And then as we kind of head to a cheerier climes and an exciting release from the turgidness of our home offices, what is the world going to look like? How is experience going to converge with D2C? And how can organizations make sure that that's a seamless process and collect the right kind of data to make sure that we continue to keep the economic machine grinding forward?
Great. Well, like you said, experience, seamless, definitely ticking the numbers. Martin, you did the work. Were there any themes or topics that stood out for you now that this is our 4th or 5th one of these?
Yeah, so I think brands going direct is just an ongoing trend. In terms of other things that brands have changed, we've seen speedy click and collect, and in some cases speedy delivery has become less popular year on year. It's probably because there's more demand. obviously, last year, if we benchmark February 2020 to current, we see what looks like performance decreases in some areas, but presumably it's got to do with a huge uptick. We've seen like a doubling of e-commerce in the markets.
Great. Well, look, let's jump in then to your deck, and we've got how brands have responded. So we'll cover that off. We look at the top 500, and I just want to point out that in the report itself, we've got some very nice case studies. Tommy Hilfiger, Hotel Chocolat, Sephora, Nike, Pandora. We'll cover a couple of those today, but not all of them. But do rest assured they are available. And I've put the URL there so you can get a copy of the report if you don't have it already. And as ever, it's free of charge for retailers. So Martin, I'm going to move forward. Just tell me when you want to move as we go through the deck. So over to you, Martin.
Thanks, Ian. So I'm going to cycle through a few slides here, which just have overview charts showing in aggregate who the top 500 are, the types of customers they sell to, and the overall performance that they've exhibited over the past few years. So in figure 1, we've got the composition of the index. Most of the top 500 sell fashion products, but only a few will sell furniture and home decor. In figure 2, we see the list comprises companies selling across the single market, but some consumers in some countries will recognize more of the brands than others. Skipping to the next slide here. On the left here, figure 3, the categories which retailers sell in and what they belong in. So that if you had to give only one area in which each brand belonged to with an other field, you can see that the list is dominated by the fashion, apparel, and accessories market. And that's something that we can all see when we glance through the list. If you have your report in front of you, you'll see that. And that's just because...
How does this relate to the overall top 500? So in the normal or the full top 500 with retailers, we obviously have non-brands like the grocers, for example. There'd be half a dozen of those. But is this indicative of the fact that overall the biggest and best retailers tend to be in fashion and apparel, or is it skewed for the brands?
I'd say the biggest and the best brands tend to be in that area, or at least if you were to take the biggest and look at the makeup, you would find that most of them fall into the fashion, apparel, and accessories, and that reflects the fact that many consumers, when they are buying those products, are looking for a particular brand. And so going direct to customer makes a little bit more sense, perhaps, than it does with, I don't know, your plumbing supplies or something like that, which obviously there are brands involved in those spaces as well.
Yes. Okay, great. Thanks.
Figure 4, we've got e-commerce platforms that are used by the companies. See a few big names there. And then the other is comprised of a lot of smaller ones, including custom built options. Next slide there. And I really like this one. It shows us the year-on-year change in aggregate performance. So if each metric gives a brand a particular score, then doing better in that metric gives a higher score. And so across hundreds of metrics measured across 500 different brands, you can see that year on year, there's an improvement. And across all areas, we see that there's a steady improvement year on year in most years, in most areas.
But in the customer dimension, Martin, we seem to have either plateaued or flattered or
Mm.
not made the same level of progress as in the other dimensions. Is there a reason for that? Have we been busy elsewhere, or is it already, have we reached peak customers?
Definitely not. Definitely not. There's lots of room for improvement. Uh, the uh, the what we're seeing here is a combination of two things. In some areas, brands have got a lot better. In other areas, we've seen a doubling of wait times for certain types of customer service when we're doing our mystery shopping, etc. So it takes longer even on live chat. It takes longer for a Facebook message to get answered. It takes longer for a web form to get answered. So I think that customer service element, again, probably due to a doubling of what many brands are dealing with in terms of the amount of trade online. They've had to retrain teams. They've had to pull people from stores and throw them behind a computer. They've had to bring on more staff. It's been quite a challenge, and they've really risen to the occasion. But in some areas, you can really see that strain, which comes from that growth.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Okay, skip to the next one. Here we get to see the difference between an elite retailer and a merely top 500 brand.
Merely top 500.
The elite is a group of just 6 companies at the very top of the index. And below them, we have about 15 who we class as leading. And then we go round up all those in the next group up to 50, top 50, etc. So the elite are miles ahead, and the lower ones tend to have an average performance that's significantly lower, which just shows that I think we're covering a large number of companies, and 500 is a lot. And by the time you get down to the bottom, in terms of the size of these companies, we have some which are doing very small amounts of retail each year.
Yeah.
So for them, they might actually be larger companies, but they're mostly wholesale, for example.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. And we've also got the average index growth. So I don't want to stretch a point too far, but I think we're seeing in terms of capability that this is also tracking sales growth as well. So there is quite an interesting, if not direct, but relationship with either they get better and sell more, or because they're selling more, they're fixing and investing in more things, and overall the world is becoming a more capable place.
So the size of companies in our list, the revenues they have, the amount of web traffic, the number of stores that are operating, these things comprise about 30% of the value that goes towards a retailer's or a brand's rank in our index. So yes, as they get bigger and as the whole market grows, there is an upward trend, but the majority in most years of the improvement that you see will be down to performance improvements rather than just size growth.
Great.
Hey,
Hopefully those are linked.
A question from me. Have you seen any impact on any of your members that you're tracking of some of the fledgling supply chain issues that are hitting? I mean, because I notice your fast fashion, we've seen a lot of documented supply chain challenges, both in fast fashion, consumer electronics, car manufacturing, et cetera, et cetera. Has that impacted any of those sort of customer experience versus growth yet in any of your studies?
Yes. So one area that we've noticed actually, and this trend started pre-pandemic, so we can talk confidently about it, is around collection. So instead of seeing brands have a daily drop off of items that need to be collected at each of their stores, we've seen a lot of them pare back that offering, and actually only about a third are offering same day or next day collection from a store compared to what the number that we're doing just 2 or 3 years ago. So I think there's been a reprioritization, and going along with that, perhaps that strain that you're talking about, as it becomes routine. If it's not next day, then something's wrong. So a lot of customers are very, very accustomed to that.
Interesting, thank you. And by the way, thanks for the question, Lindsay. If there are any more questions, do throw them in while you have a chance to ask the person who's been pulling the stats together. So this assaults the eyeballs. Martin, what can I perceive through these bars?
So on figure 9, we've got the extent to which brands show fulfillment options on their homepage and how that has changed over the last 14 months. And each bar is a country. So we're seeing the localized brands in each country. Although there are 500 brands in total in the index, only a certain portion of them will be localized to a country and included in that country's aggregate figure. So the change is that year on year there's been a increase in this, a significant increase. And when you're looking in aggregate, you don't normally see significant increases of this magnitude. So this tends to be, I suppose, a sign that this is something which brands are doing in response to customer demand, and making it much easier for their customers to see, in this case, how easily they can have it delivered. It tends to be one of the first questions a customer has when they're looking on the website: how soon can this be with me? Because if it's not quick enough, they might just go to a different retailer.
Yes.
Rather than.
And of course, to Lindsay's question as well, availability of product is fundamental, as well as gettability once you decide you want to buy it. So I think, I know when you were doing the COVID tracker at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, we did track how frequently and how rapidly retailers put up COVID-specific delivery messages on their website, whereas now it seems to be just becoming not quite the norm, but nearly half of retailers by country are making it very clear how gettable the product is.
I think some of our customers, Ian, are also commenting to us about seeing that sort of engagement period from order or experience to fulfillment being really critical, because this concept of either going into an experience center, whether it be online, whether it be in person, and doing a kind of pseudo shopping trip where you over purchase or over spec or over option a vehicle, and then once you get back to the sanctity and quietness of your home, a lot of retailers, car manufacturers are noticing that they're getting a severe amount of strip from purchase because they're not engaging, because of that tail between order point and fulfillment. The longer it is, the more the consumer has to cancel that order. So again, it's critical that retailers keep people interested, not just during the moment of truth, but post moment of truth, where they're really they've had that endorphin rush of purchase. Keeping that sense of engagement is critical, because as I say, huge hit in the car manufacturing industry. A couple of our big car manufacturing customers who've seen a strong order have seen a strip out the minute that the consumers return to that kind of quiet and peaceful moment. So again, critical. Supply chains increase, engagements have to increase.
That's right. And I think as well, that links into the ideas of transparency and communication. So if I get home and I've spec'd a car, and all of a sudden I'm explaining why I've over-spec'd it in the cold light of day, I think I can just cancel it because it's quote-unquote just an order. Whereas if by the time I get home, there's a photo of a smiling engineer spray painting a panel in the same colour as my wife's eyes from the sample I gave on my phone, I'm kind of committed. We know the value process has started. So we've seen a lot, when we're looking at things with our delivery hats on, that customers have been willing to accept increased delivery time periods, but they have an increased desire for information. Don't worry, it is on its way. It has been picked. It is waiting for collection, or it will be there tomorrow. So I think, what we're seeing in the brand world is that the communication has to be at the same level as the brand values. And importantly, the delivery partners have to carry the brand values as well. So if you have bought a lovely product, you think, oh God, they're sending it with carrier X, it's going to be a disaster, it's going to be thrown over the hedge, then that kind of mitigates against the experience end to end.
And Ian, I think the challenge you've got is retailers really need emotional purchases to continue for them to kind of grow their footprint. You don't need that shirt in 7 different colors. But at the time when you're purchasing it, you really do need it. But rational decisions and retailing, sometimes there is an interesting crossover, and where those, the compulsory purchase, sadly, is ignored in the cold light of day.
Good. So let's carry on with some cold light. On to the next slide, Martin. What do we have here? Oh, we're talking about delivery, so let's go straight on to returns.
So returns on figure 11 on the left here. We've got year-on-year change again. So February 2020, pre-pandemic, to April 2021. We can see that most options have been increasing, like the number of retailers or brands offering them. And surprisingly, the one with the biggest growth has actually been returned to store. And that's really not something we expected.
But this is partly because in the first or second, I'm losing track now, but in one of the reopenings, we weren't able to go in the store, but we could pass the store and hand something back through an appropriately sterilized aperture. And we could pick things up. But so I think that might have maybe some results in that was the only thing you could use the store for, was pick up and return. I was surprised that the home pickup dropped off, because I can remember writing about this with great excitement that someone would come to my house and pick up a return. It's what I dreamt of. I need never leave the house again. We were very excited about it, and yet that's the one that seems to have dropped off. Do we have an idea why that's fallen back? Cost, availability? What's happened there?
Mostly cost, and partly the pandemic may have been an excuse for brands to fade that one out a little bit, because with so much strain being put on their logistics partners, this is not the right time to be sort of expanding services like that. They just need to get products in the first place to customers.
All right, so all out, but walk back to the store. Okay, and then we've got something here on the shopping cart. What's happened here?
Yeah, so save an item to shopping cart, again, huge change year on year. They're not in consumer electronics at all, just the same. But in a number of the different product categories, we see that. So it's just flagging up things which brands have been changing, like the doubling of this in terms of whether you can save your shopping cart. It's I think there are certain ways in which brands are experimenting at the moment. That's perhaps the only strong explanation for the year-on-year change we see over a year of pandemic. They've got a lot of customers who previously weren't shopping online, and adding in little features which may make it easier for them and more easier for them to pick up is perhaps what we're seeing.
And so is this linked to the proliferation of personalization and save the cart and come back to your cart, and I've added a freebie to your cart, or here's a voucher for 10% off your cart, or those 7 shirts you ordered, 3 are not in stock now. I mean, Lindsay, this is an area that must be bread and butter for you around that customer connection. Are you seeing an increased desire to make more connection between the browse, intent to buy, actual buy, remarketing, that sort of continuous cycle of comms and promotion?
It's funny because, and again, I don't want to keep harping on about our change in personal circumstances, but kind of pre the last year, should I say, what we found was organizations were finding an investment in cart re-engagement, cart abandonment, were not really providing the results that all of the technology vendors were promising them. A thoroughly engaged Lindsay who re-engaged with his cart because of a 10% discount, they weren't really seeing the conversion that they needed to kind of justify the expenditure in those particular projects. However, as we've kind of come into the pandemic, what we're seeing this concept of keeping people inside your brand and keeping them engaged through things like not just personalization of messaging, but personalization of product as well. We're going to cover this when we go on to one of our case studies later with Nike. Almost the name of one of your children, Ian, that got a victory. Nike really realized that, there was a hell of a lot of competition on the high street, and keeping people kind of engaged in a D2C model, not just in the brand, but in the products itself by personalization with products like Nike ID, where you could actually build a customized piece of footwear, store it in your basket, and then they would build an engagement strategy with you around that particular personalized bit of footwear by offering other products that were either close in color, in style to that piece of footwear. So what we've seen is, because the experience is kind of, people who were shopping on a high street who didn't enjoy their online experience compared to their in-store experience have now stripped, and they've moved vendor. These online organizations are now really investing in this kind of pre, post, and during basket engagement to make sure that we're keeping eyeballs on product, eyeballs on purchase. And we're really seeing an uptake in organizations starting to invest in further and further into that to make sure that people are kept inside the eye of the purchase.
Great. Well, let's jump to the case studies now. We did have some facts on click and collect, but we've covered those slightly at a high level, so I'll skip on. We have the lovely Tommy Hilfiger. They were singled out for some focus in the report. What is it they've been up to? They've already told us, Martin, that this was their strongest year for digital growth, which is very impressive. Was that all good news, or was it against the background of everything else dropping through the floor and just leaving them with an increased but still small online?
Yeah, it's one of many brands that has managed to adapt reasonably well to a lot of the changes. I think in particularly around keeping the customers updated about what those changes are, and the messaging has been really strong. Look at how that brand has addressed that.
Yeah. I think what's been impressive about brands like Tommy Hilfiger, I mean, they've done it well. Others, as you mentioned, have done it as well. Is the move from being a marketing site, which is big fat images, rolling video, catwalk lifestyle, and then a relatively thin product section, is they've managed to keep that brand feel, but really have stepped up in terms of acting like someone that really wants to sell to you there and then, rather than simply, this is us, go and find us at a local department store. And I think it may not seem glamorous, but it really is a lot of work. And I think they've done a great job to move from being a wholesale brand to being a direct selling brand. But when we look at Hotel Chocolat, in a way they've come the other direction, which is you having started out as a sort of a direct-ish brand from the beginning, have really grown in a more rounded, branded way. Why did they get their feature?
Well, I think they've made lots of changes, and according to we've got the quote there. According to the co-founder, these changes were in the pipeline. They planned them out. They already all wanted to do them, and this just happened to be the thing which catalyzed that in their business. They turned all their attention as they had to become e-commerce only for a period of time.
And I think interestingly, in Hotel Chocolat, imagine going from somebody who directly sells, chocolate gifts to becoming more of a holding group for chocolate experiences. Yes. And that's really interesting that they've gone into, recent purchase of a co-business of theirs, not for a lot of money. I think it was £4 they purchased their business for, but
I think there was a small matter of some debt being rapidly repaid, so I think there was a large check involved.
But again, really exciting to see them expanding from just a pure D2C online play into more of a chocolate experience, really kind of advocating the name of Hotel Chocolat.
Yeah, absolutely. And who doesn't want to go to a chocolate spa as well? So
very nice hotel in St. Lucia, I should add.
Good. So let's have a look at another one that I think has been impressive, which is Sephora. So
Nike. So I think we're running a little bit out of time. We might go.
Let's jump to Nike then. So, Lindsay, you were talking about Nike with great passion earlier on. What we could see is that their overall sales fell somewhat, but they've had an increase in direct. But then in the European market, where about half of their stores had to close, we've really seen that the sales grew significantly. So digital sales are up. I don't think it totally netted out, but it really has, I think, moved Nike forward from not just being a sort of flagship store with some nice mobile and customization, but very much just to be in the game. It really has turned them into a proper retailer of significant scale.
Never mind our massive interest in leisure wear, since we didn't have to attend any kind of public setting. I think you're right. I think Nike's real pivot from being a very sort of experiential brand to that D2C model has been nothing short of brilliant, actually. I think the way in which they've kept people inside the brand, constantly experiencing the brand, their different tactics and techniques to get people to stay inside the D2C model whilst we've all been kept in isolation, I think is been fantastic. And what it really shows is an organization that had such a physical experience. If they're collecting the right kind of consumer data, they can push that experience outside of the store and outside of the kind of B2C model and into a D2C model with some great aplomb and great results.
Excellent. I think you mentioned earlier on about supply chain challenges. It's also been impressive to note that product releases and product availability have continued, I mean, from an outside perspective, largely uninterrupted. So again, a majorly impressive bout of activity there. So look, we have covered off our examples. I'm just going to put the link there for downloads. We have a few minutes left, so now is the time, if you've been shy, get that question in quickly before time passes us all by. We will, of course, drop you a note with the link to download the report. So you'll get the deck and the link afterwards. But as we just bring it to a close then, are there any topics that we haven't covered in our highlights that you want to make a final case for? Either Martin or Lindsay?
I think, I'll just say, I'll bookend it with what I said at the beginning of the call. As kind of B2C and D2C converges into this single kind of experience that retailers are having with consumers, knowing who your consumer is, understanding what is invasive, what is not invasive, and how to really give that personalized and preferential experience to consumers across their engagement cycle is now more critical than ever before. Keeping people inside that sphere of influence, inside the product experience, all the way from first glance through to fulfillment. It just goes to prove that actually data is the key in which we can convert these ordinary moments of truth.
Lovely. So, on that note, I think we should start wrapping things up. Thank you very much, Lindsay, for your contribution. Thank you, Martin, for your work on this. But in a way, this is kind of the tip of a year-round iceberg, if I can mix my glacial and temporal metaphors there. We're looking at a number of things over the coming months. For example, the growth in digital native vertical brands, DNVBs, and how that intersects with the private equity startup market to unicorn world. So just looking through the attendees and seeing a number of interesting people, a quick appeal for some volunteers. Drop me a note, Ian at RetailX.net. Would love to chat to some of the brands I can see on the call now for our ongoing research there. Also, heads up that in a matter of 4 or 5 weeks, our Europe 2021 market report is going to be available, profiling the European marketplace, so country by country analysis. And Europe still includes, for our purposes, Europe, so it's EEA, etc., but it's a big report. And we are looking as well at the intersection of brands and marketplaces. So even as brands are looking to go direct to consumer, as Martin noted earlier on, sometimes home crafted on platforms, one of the very attractive routes is to go straight onto a marketplace and get customer liquidity as well as all of the infrastructure support as well. So newly released our brands and marketplaces report. So again, we'll have a separate session on that, but just to flag that up. And before I go, I'm sure it must be in your calendars already, but July the 5th is the start of our e-commerce world review, where we have 15 webinars coming up, covering everything from personalization to China, from the Japanese and Australian marketplaces through to 6 innovations in delivery and logistics. So just what you need in your lives, more webinars, but hopefully punchy, relevant and useful. So on that note, I think it's time to say goodbye. I'm going to hover over the end button. Again, apologies, it's going to throw you all out into the digital streets. But thank you for sharing some time with us today. We appreciate your company. Let us know if you have any further questions. And just a final thank you to Martin and Lindsay. And with that, it's goodbye and happy trading to everybody.
Bye.